Again, good morning, everybody, and compliments of the new year. Same to you. Hey, what a way of starting 2018. It's a very bad way of starting 2018. This is going to be a very long year. So we better start it properly. And welcome to every one of us. Happy to see you again. I hope you did have a very good holiday, if you had. And congratulations to the party that had a conference, the Party of South Africans, African National Congress. Well done in your conference. You made South Africans proud, and you disappointed the few. There were those who thought there would be blood on the floor of that conference, and I didn't see anything like blood on TV as I was watching. All I saw was a united organization. I wish all organizations can be like that. We are waiting for conferences of other political organizations. They must learn. They must learn on what we have seen on TV. Congratulations again. And we have very few people who are elected NEC members in that. I know Honorable Van Dam is the national figure in her party. Now I know that Mr. Kubayi is in the national executive of his party. Congratulations, sir. And I know that Minister Kubayi is also in the national executive. Congratulations to you, ma'am. It's a pity the deputy minister is not here. She is also part of the national executive. And I think I had to do this so that, because I will do it again when there are other conferences as the chair of the committee. Welcome, Minister, and I want to say a few things up front, honorable members, that sometime last year, as this committee, we had instructions from the Deputy Speaker to conduct some investigation emanating from outer report to investigate some activities of the former Minister Mutambi. That letter was communicated to the committee, and by the end of last year, as the chair, I promised that it's the matter that we are going to handle this time of the year, the first term of the year. And I think it will be proper that in our meeting, not this one, in one or two meetings to come, put that matter on the table so that we can process it, do the necessary things to get an advice, as we are trying to do from legal, and all of that, and then we can agree on a date to proceed with all those issues. That's one issue. The second issue that I committed as the chair to do was the issue of MDDA. because there was this strong view from members that we must investigate MDD. Not necessarily the issue of the chair, because I think the issue of the chair was explained by the activities within MDDA itself. And for sure, in the next 1 or 2 meetings, it's one of the issues that we'll have to finalize as the committee, so that we can act swiftly on those 2 matters. So they'll reflect in our draft program as this Committee on Communications. I felt I must address those 2 issues so that they are at the table in our next meeting and propose a process of how we are going to deal with it. That was by way of welcoming the members of the Portfolio Committee, as well as our guests and the Department of Communication. The agenda is in front of you, members. And I just want to deal with apologies. The matters that I started with will be dealt with in the next meeting. Honorable Van Dijk, as an apology, is assigned to do some party work. So the apology says, Honorable Mohammed Thala is a doctor's appointment. Who's this? Is that? Okay, just that I don't know Mutlaucha. I know Mutlalucha. There is an apology. I hope it's a written apology. Just to finish, members, first I see a by short here that says Honorable Van Dam will have to leave at 12. Is that so, Honorable Member? Honorable Van Dam will leave at 12. There is a letter from Mr. Mhlalocha. It says here there is no reason provided, but there is an apology. It's an SMS. It's an SMS to you. There is an SMS, but I think the department is here. The minister will do the necessary things in relation to that one. Yes, that's all. But I am reliably informed that Ms. Libby Lloyd passed on Thursday, and I think all of us know who Ms. Libby Lloyd was. She was an MDDA at some stage and did wonderful work there. Libby Lloyd passed on. And before we get to other issues, we'll have to just stand up and for a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Whilst we are on apologies, I'll have to hear members accepting or not accepting the apologies, but I'll leave the issue of Mr. Mhlalocha when the minister is starting her own presentation, because she will have to say a number of things before that. Honorable Moss.
Chair. As part of the apologies, we have as well requested to be released at 11 o'clock for another meeting of the Public Enterprises Portfolio Committee, with Honorable Gunguvel.
You will have to discuss between the two of you who will remain and who will go. But one of you must remain here. So you'll have to deal with that. Unfortunately, the meetings clash, and we need one of you in this meeting. Thank you very much, Honorable. Maybe I must say, Comrade Matisha. This honorable thing is too long. Comrade Matisha.
Thank you. I too had sent a message already, and in actual fact, one was not even supposed to be around. But then I thought it would be tabled. Thanks.
Yeah, no, it was tabled because I'm sure they saw you here, and then they deleted that.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I think we are ready now to start. Agreed? Hand over to you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would request, if we are not done by 1, I go to the doctor, I can go and come back. I do have an appointment to see the doctor. And good morning, colleagues, and thank you very much, Chair, for giving us this opportunity to come here, and compliments. Firstly, indeed, Chair, just to confirm the issue of Libby Lloyd, she's been buried today, but the sector memorial service is tomorrow at Gold Reef City. Those who are able to attend, has the sector memorial service of Libby Lloyd is tomorrow. She's been buried. They have a private funeral today. Up front, Chair, let me start. I think you did highlight the issue of Mr. Mhlalocha. Let me just highlight, just to be precise. On Friday, Mr. Mhlalocha was convicted in the magistrate court on fraud and corruption issues. After learning that, because it happened Friday, we got the message towards the end of Friday. By yesterday, we tried to get hold of the judgment. We were informed that the judgment will only be ready tomorrow. Once the judgment is ready, we will be able to write formally to Parliament, because Parliament is the appointing authority to deal with the matter. But I have requested to see Mr. Mhlalocha tomorrow as well, so that I can engage him as a minister responsible. So that's where the issue is. The Act is very precise and clear in terms of if there is a conviction. So we'll have to follow the law and do what is absolutely necessary. So I thought, let me just be upfront, Chair, in terms of that. Hence, he's not here today because of that matter. Secondly, Chair, thank you very much. We are presenting matters in terms of the BDM project. But again, I want to thank you for acceding to my request to take the committee on board on the matters of the appointment processes in SABC. To that extent, I hope, because I did this without consulting you, I will not be in trouble for extending the invite to the chair of the board of SABC and the HR chair, because I just felt that it's important that every time when there are matters affecting an entity, that entity is there, because that's how I would really want. I work in a very transparent manner. So yeah, I forgot to formally write to the chair and request that permission. And when we come to the agenda item, we'll deal with it. On the BDM project, Chair, let me upfront say that it was very interesting when we were preparing for the presentation. I actually realized that the last presentation on this project was done when I was the chair of the committee. It was done. We had requested that briefing. So we tried to bring up, not to take too long, but to bring a lot of critical information for the portfolio committee to be informed of where the project is. Now, upfront, Chair, I think even in the media space, the question has been to me, will you be able to deliver the project on time? The first question is, if I'm given the necessary resources, yes, we will. You look at our budget in the process. It's very short. The deadline of June 2019 is not a self-imposed deadline; it's ITU deadline. So we need to meet that. And our appeal to our colleague in finance and national treasury was that let's find mechanism to fund this project so that we can migrate. We think we have been able to put in place all mechanisms to be able to migrate, and you'll pick it up on the presentation, Chair. Now, the second issue that I think I need to upfront speak to is the issue of encryption and non-encryption. You'd note that, Chair, in terms of government policy, a policy was passed in terms of the encryption matter, non-encryption matter, and there's been a call to say there is a need to review that policy. Now, what has been an issue for us is that there is a constitutional court judgment that speaks to the matter that makes it a bit complicated for us. And maybe we can have another meeting, Chair, just to focus on those areas in detail. We didn't bring the court judgment, have the court judgment in front of us so that we can be, all of us, on the same page to say, do we interpret it the same way? Because from what I got as legal opinion was the interpretation to say the court judgment didn't speak only to the process, but also made a pronouncement around government not using public funds to fund commercial interest. And that's what I'm saying. That might need a more detailed discussion so that we can take each other on board, because I might be talking here and honorable members don't have in front of them the court judgment. That's one. But the other issue, Chair, that we want to flag as well, you would note, and I remember this was even when I was still a chairperson of telecoms, there was some investigation around the project itself in terms of the conduct of some officials at USASA, and then there was a investigation in terms of the manufacturers themselves. But again, I need to highlight that Competition Commission has also come in. There have been investigation, collusion in terms of the project, and we are expecting a report quite soon in terms of that. I have received a letter from the Competition Commission that requested us not to proceed with any procurement around that, and therefore there seemed to be some level of need for answers from the people who were involved in the project. So we'll wait for that report. It will guide us as well. But we are not waiting completely, because if you look at the presentation, I just want to highlight what we are worried about is to get the nation on board on the project, one. So we'll announce a start date and an end date of registration. So it can continue to be an open-ended. But part of the issues that we had to do is to put a project plan in place, and then the acting DG will deal with that. Put the project plan in place, but put a project office. We literally now have an office, a boardroom, we call it a war room for DTT. I meet with the entire team across the value chain. We have representative of Treasury, we have representative of DTI, we have representative of all the entities that are impacted on the project. Every Monday, 7 o'clock, we've made that commitment, because we're saying the delay on the project necessitates for us that we can't treat it as normal anymore. So that as part of just saying, let's get this on the ball, let's get running. And so that weekly, the easy report, we tick, there's this task that needs to be done this week. Once it's done, we come back on Monday, it's a tick. This is what we've done. So we think we are now ready in terms of our work. Chair, out of the rollout in the SK area, there are lessons that we have learned. Lessons learned is that we anticipated 23,000 households to be registered. we ended up with 26. This is because the policy says you are migrating TV owning households. Now, when communities hear that there's this project that the government is involved in, those 3,000 households which did not have a TV went and purchased a TV either in a pawn shop and all that. Now you ended up with an obligation to cover them as well. So what we have done in the process of review, which you'll see, I want to speak to this because you might see the numbers changing. I don't want people to think that maybe we are not understanding what we do. So out of that experience, we went back to Stats SA to say, then give us the figures in terms of how many households do we have in the country, one, how many households are earning 3,200 and below in the country. Then we were given a figure overall, and then we said out of that as well, how many households are TV owning. Now, if you look at that, households that are TV owning that are earning 3,200 and below are almost 5 million. That if, but you are to include those who do not own a TV, then you come to 7 million households. So that's the real figures that we're looking at. We had to go and ask for a legal opinion. Are we obligated as the department to also cover this 2 million that doesn't have TV households? The legal opinion says yes, we are obligated, because some of the areas, not that people don't want to have TV, they have not had a TV because there's not been a signal in the area. Therefore, they did not bother to have a TV. So with this migration, if you have a set-top box and you are in that area, you receive signal. So those people, we assume they will have an interest in having TV. Therefore, it will put an obligation on us. So that figure has changed. So that's why I'm upfront explaining it, Chair, so that colleagues can understand where there will be changes. And fortunately, that's why I'm saying the last presentation that was done in Parliament for both the committees, I'm pulling from that in looking at the issues. I think I will allow Chair, the acting DG, together with the project manager, to take us through the project, the presentation. I think they will share. I'm not so sure. They will share amongst themselves in terms of who takes that, and then we can respond to the questions. Thanks. Maybe let me say up front, we've got Mr. TT as the acting DG of the department, chairperson. We are of cognizance of the concerns of the committee around the appointment process. We are really trying to rush getting that, but there are some challenges that we're having. Mr. Tabiso TT, THITI, TT.
Thanks, Chair. The presentation will have the following. One is the high-level overview, which is mainly a reflection from what was last presented and what has been achieved so far. We'll then look in terms of the set-top box procurement and distribution, implementation rollout phases, challenges and mitigating factors, the roadmap towards achieving the deadline of 2019, and reflect on the risk and issues associated with us meeting the target of 2019 as anticipated. And will be just presentation on the funding requirements, and we'll talk about some of the key enablers. Honorable Chair, on the issue of the transmission network, which was supposed to have been presented in the previous time, is that the assessment that we made was that from the 87.3% of South Africans will be able to receive DTT, and the balance of 12.7 will be covered through DTH. And in terms of the digital broadcast content, there are all 3 channels of SABC and the news who are live on the DTT, and we have also additional channels from ETV. And furthermore, there are 18 radio stations that will be able to be accessed through the completion of the process. In the previous engagement, the issue was around the compliance with the National Bureau of Standards. From the manufacturer side, it was ensured and double checked that they all complied with the published standards, and therefore we were in a position to roll out the subsidized set-top boxes distribution in some of the areas. Key issues to consider is that there's a total of about 15.1 million households, and out of that 12 million of them are owning sets, TV sets, and out of that the government committed to migrate about 5 million with subsidization of set-top box kits and installation. And we then discovered that there's an additional 2.5 million households owing TV sets that do not qualify and were not included in the previous statistical presentations. And in addition to that, which Minister reflected on, is that there is an additional of 3 million households who do not own TV sets who needs to be considered for the migration. In terms of the budget, 2.5 that was allocated, 2.45 billion that was allocated, only 1.5 million set-top box kits and installation and all through the value chain could be afforded. USASA has ordered the 1.5 between 2014 and 2015, and to date 720,000 kits have been delivered and they are warehoused at SAPO. And out of that, there are about 475 that are outstanding, and the rest have been rolled out. And so far, we have covered almost 563,677 registration. The number might appear to be insignificant, but this is because of the following reasons. The first phase was to cover the SK area. The second one was to cover the borderline area. And now we're moving into national rollout after we have covered those, because those are the key issues that were very critical at the time. In terms of the SK area, we've managed to cover 23,161 installation. And in that particular area, in the SK area, the analog broadcast have been switched off. In terms of taking the process forward in terms of the rollout plan, we have developed 3 phases. One is the short term, medium term, and long term. In terms of the first term, we need to clear the already procured set-top boxes that are in the SAPO warehouses, but the target will be around the predominantly flat provinces along borders of Free State and Northwest, and also continue with registration of indigent families to ensure that at least by June we have integrated data that we are going to work on to include the second phase and third phase. In terms of the medium term, we need to look at acquiring some of the additional DTH decoders, because there are some areas where we have DTH signal processes being concluded, but the only outstanding issues are around the set-top boxes. In the long term, we need to reflect on the new procurement of devices to ensure that we cover the remainder of the provinces, and we need to ensure that we conclude the rollout of the remainder in the borderland and inland by June 2019. In terms of the challenges, we have serious issues around resources that Minister alluded to a point where we have been juggling between different entities to seek assistance to ensure that some of the processes are not halted. The absence of DTH devices is one of them that we'll be looking at to ensure that we address it as quick as we can. But some of the challenges what Minister spoke about in terms of project management, where we had not clarified the start and end of registration to the public to ensure that we can have real integrated data to ensure that our planning is done correctly to meet the deadline of 2019. In terms of implementation and dealing with some of the challenges, what we have done so far is to develop a broader coordination mechanism and partnership with some of the entities to ensure that we can align and better coordinate the resources to meet the deadline. We have started the discussions around soliciting advice on the new procurement model to look into what the Competition Commission have raised before. We have also developed a fast-tracking mechanism with intensified awareness program through various platforms to ensure that we increase both registration and include some of the key stakeholders in the process. What we are going to do further is to look in terms of the use of existing qualified installers with the collaboration with the municipalities to ensure that there's ownership of the process, and also to fast track the completion of the training with DPW on the installer program. Minister raised certain issues that I think we need to look at, which are around, one, the constitutional issues, and two, the technological challenges or technological evolution. One of the key issues is that while the current scheme takes care of indigent households, it to some extent have an exclusive element to it, where you cannot cover for those who only have TVs and exclude those who don't have TVs. Because of importance is to ensure that we create or afford universal access of information to all that require to get it. That comes to a point where out of the previous assessment we got to understand that there are 3.1 million households without television sets who needs to be covered in the whole set-top boxes and digital migration. Other challenges that we might have to look at and manage them carefully is around the realities that the current analog services is gradually being phased out throughout the world. There are certain considerations. For instance, we have digital TV becoming one of the de facto technology for consumers, and we also have integrated digital television sets emerging as a default choice for viewing by others. And on the basis of that, it is therefore proposed that we have a consideration to issue IDTVs for poor households who currently don't have TV sets in place of set-top boxes, because you'll then be addressing two issues. One is a provision of a set for universal access, and also provision of content through the set-top boxes. It is also being proposed that we consider the current TV owning houses to ensure that the subsidy covers those eligible, and also we ensure that in that particular process we come up with a policy decision to say whether are we looking at the set-top boxes to continue, or we're going to look at IDTVs as the alternative. In terms of how we're going to move process going forward, we have developed a public-private partnership process where we collaborate with the private sector, commercial broadcasters, to expedite the implementation rollout. We are going to engage with them to utilize their distributing channels and marketing platforms of the industry to boost both registration and rollout. We have also started engaging with the TV manufacturers to ensure that there could be consideration of production of low-cost IDTVs to ensure that we can cover what we need to look in terms of those indigent and those who don't have TVs. In terms of some of the issues that we are going to look at is to, with some of our partners, is to look in terms of how do we create education and public awareness campaigns, and also how do we strengthen the distribution networks, which mainly have to be credible and auditable, so that we ensure that through those particular networks, those who ought to receive are in actual fact those who are supposed to receive the DTT subsidies. One of the issues is that the overall objective is to migrate households beyond 85% threshold across the country through government subsidy to enable switch off of analog services in line with the 2019 deadline. And to ensure that in our policy approach we include procurement and installation of the remaining 3.5 million households that were not covered before. and also augmenting of department resources by means of enhancing the private-public partnership in areas of marketing and human resource management. And what we are going to do now as new institutional arrangement is that the minister will announce the registration period for the qualifying household. That will be done through a number of media platforms. Will ensure that the local registration teams and installers on the ground are in areas where the local municipalities and some of the key stakeholders at different levels participate in the whole process. And we'll also ensure that we strengthen the oversight mechanism in ensuring that the process is smooth and it does not exclude anyone, in collaboration with other stakeholders. Of importance is that we need to reflect on the funding for project management, public education and consumer awareness, to assist Centec with their own dual elimination processes, establishment of the contact center to ensure that those who apply and when they need to follow up, they have an entry and exit point of information, procurement of migration devices for both IDTVs and set-top boxes, distribution of devices and installation of devices and activation of services in all the areas. Chair and honorable members, that's the summary of our budget. In total, what we need to date is 6,602,000,000 for us to be able to conclude the whole digital migration for 2019 June. There are certain things that I think we need to reflect on, that we need to ensure that they are in place. That, for instance, the funding of the procurement process needs to be concluded before June 2018, and we also need to ensure that we deliver the first batch of devices in line with our project plan starting in July 2018. We also need to ensure that we create a clear and simple message for targeted audience to ensure that everyone who ought to hear the message about registration are part of the messaging. We're going to use community radio station, television platforms, and where possible, we're going to ensure that the private sector assists us with resources such as marketing material to ensure that we communicate to those who need to get the message. We're going to get promotion material with clear digital migration message with start date to end date throughout government platforms. We're going to use community development workers for registration of household through local registration. And we're going to create a reliable database and adequate number of installers through partnership with the local municipalities, as I've indicated. Thank you.
Thanks, Acting DG. Anything, Minister? Members?
We are fine, we'll take the questions.
Yeah, I think we'll engage on the presentation. But on the issues of informing the citizens on what we're doing, I hear the public education and consumer awareness and your desire to partner with a number of people. But are there no other avenues whilst you are engaging those people? For instance, there is Parliament. One of the issues that we rely on is what you are doing, because as you speak now, you speak to the public, except that you are very soft, so that what you say is beamed out there. So if we can also check what can we do with Parliament resources of communication, I think for me it will assist as you are trying to deal with other private people your communication. So yeah, you really need to communicate what we are trying to do as the department. Members? Any question, Honorable Van Dijk? Van Dam, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, just a question about Mr. Mohlalocha. So what is his current status now? Has he been serving as the chair? Because Parliament approved the appointment in November. So I wasn't clear about what's happened since then. Has he been at work? Has he been drawing a salary? Where is he now? I understand that you're waiting for the judgment and you want to meet with him. I understand that. I just want to understand where he is right now. And then about DTT, I think the Constitutional Court dealt with the process around the policy making. So it said that Minister Mutambi was right to change the policy because policy making rests with the executive. So it wasn't up to the court to define what the policy should be. It should be, the court said it should be up to the executive. Now, I think it's very important that clarity is given about your position on digital migration, because it's very clear that the Minister Mutambi had a specific position, then Minister Dlodlo came in and she had a different position. So right now we're not very clear about what's going to happen. So I think it's very important for you as the current minister to be very clear about whether it will be encrypted or unencrypted. The court did not say which process must be followed in that regard. It just said it's up to the executive to make policy. Yeah.
Any other hand? Honorable Tsedi and Honorable Drachen.
Thank you. Let me welcome the presentation, but just to get clarity on some few issues, Chair, with regard to DTT. The first one is with regard to that proposal that current TV owning subsidy eligible household be afforded a choice between a subsidized STB or IDTV. And the question that comes to my mind is, what about those who have already, who already have set-top boxes as of now? What is going to be the situation with regard to that choice that you are proposing? The second one, Chair, talks to the issue that we have always been raising. Because every time we meet at this level, the issue of funding arises. I think at the level of, given the seriousness of the project, we might have to take a decision, perhaps at the portfolio committee, to have a session with Treasury and deal with this particular challenge. I was looking at the breakdown in terms of how much is required to roll out the whole project. Obviously, the ministry will have to assist in terms of what do we have for now and what else is required to effectively roll out the whole project. But all I'm saying is that there is a need, Chair, to this time around to agree on a meeting with Treasury to deal with this particular challenge. Surely we can't afford to miss the 30 June 2019 target as I let it. The second last one is the implications of the dual illumination rollout to Centec. Because when I look at the presentation, of course, there are some implications in terms of Centec with regard to the process of dual illumination. If we can as well just try and clarify that particular aspect. Look at the phases there. With phase one, I only see the June 2018 as the target that has been set, but I don't see the starting date in terms of when are we starting with that particular phase. With the rest of the phases 2 and 3, it's very clear as to when are we starting and when are we likely to end. So I would appreciate if you can just be clarified as to when exactly are we starting with phase 1. Thanks, AJ.
Okay, Honorable Trahan.
Greetings to everybody and compliments of the season. And thank you for the presentation. Firstly, public information. I have said it previously and I'm going to say it again. I would like that the public information be spread as wide as possible. Why I'm asking is that people who are deaf don't have access to your information, whether it's on TV or any other kind of information. So I would like access, particularly to TV, must be subtitled, or there must be an interpreter. And in terms of registration, how to get set-top boxes, all those messages. And also people with disabilities, pensioners, they receive well below the 3,200 Rand income. So they should also qualify, but maybe they don't receive this information. So I would like to request, in terms of public information, please let it go out as wide as possible, including people with disabilities. And I'd like to know who assists with the registration process. Is it SAPO? Because you said the community workers, but community workers are not all over, and they don't have access to all people. So who is responsible to do the registration? The resources, the devices, it's still analog. So for example, the Centec devices and SABC devices, are they still analog? Do they also still need to be digitalized? And then in the budget on slide 13, the technology and technology support, or there's another line item. Oh, there's another line item somewhere. Does that include the entities that need to be digitalized, or is that a separate amount? And which means that everything related to digital migration, would it be then more than the 6 billion? Or if you could just give me clarity on that, thank you.
Can we take that before we go to other hands? Thank you.
I shall start, and the colleagues will assist. Oh, Mutovi is there. Just to Chair, I think we take your advice. We will definitely enhance our communication, and I think Dr. Mutuvi will come in detail on what we have currently tried to do, and it also speaks to what Honourable Member Nivon Trehan has just raised on issue of subtitle. I think he will come to that one. Honourable Van Dam, Honourable Mr. Mhlaloha did take office, has started, because after the process of Parliament we did do formal appointments. I had to write to the President, and then we waited for that, and then we got, once the Speaker wrote to us after the decision by Parliament. So he was officially appointed, and he had taken oath of office, and that's why it has to be a process now. On the issue of policy position, I think we misunderstanding. Policy position can be based on an individual. That's my understanding. I can't speak for the colleagues who passed. I'll speak for myself. Policy position is not based on an individual. It's based on either a governing party will say this is what we stand for, and then it translates to government. Now, the current policy position, as per government, speaks to non-encryption. Hence, I said earlier on, Chair, that we asked for a legal opinion on the judgment. And what I got, hence I said I'm open so that we can engage, perhaps maybe get various views on the interpretation of the judgment. Yes, while the court has said the process lies with government, the executive authority, to define policy, or the executive to define policy. But there is where they have pronounced on the need for government, almost cautioning government not to utilize public funds to the benefit of commercial interest. And that's what, when the legal opinion came back and gave the interpretation. Hence I said, I'm open for us to engage fully in terms of that share, because that's how we're interpreting it. And if it's a different opinion, we can sit and look at it, and so that we're all on the same pace. Look, for me, where I'm sitting chair, the importance is for us to migrate. I would really want to get out of the space where there's still, hence I'm willing to say, let's sit, engage, and see what is it that we can help so that we can have the migration moving. Because if we speak past each other, or we start standing that side, and I also don't want to engage, we might end up fighting new court judgment, then the country suffers. So the engagement for interpretation and everything will help us broadly, not only myself, but the whole country, so that we can see progress. So that's where I think it's important. I think the team will take other issues. Let me just speak to the implication on dual illumination. Honorable Sedi, I think they will come to other issues. We currently spending on both analog and digital, because Centec is done. And it's almost as if Centec is being punished for being efficient. Because when the time frames were put, Centec went and met their targets and made sure that they are ready on time. Now, because we've not prepared the nation in terms of households to be on digital platforms, now they can switch off analog, because we're still utilizing analog devices. But the danger of it is that Centec's analog system is degenerating. And if we do not migrate, that's one of the risks. If we do not migrate, it's going to need to be upgraded. It's more cost that we have not worked out now. So meaning we might end up with more than 6 billion that we are requesting. Hence, we are very cognizant to say we have to move now, because there are consequences, huge consequences on that. And maybe coming to the issue of what Honorable Nevo Drachen raised around the devices. We've separated the project itself from broadcasting. So this budget does not include SABC's readiness. When we come to the point, because from our side is to deal with the whole project for the whole country, meaning the whole value chain. How do we speak to non-subsidized market? How do we get them ready? How do we ensure that those which are subsidized market, we get them ready? Once we do that, one of the things that we said we're going to do in the coming few weeks is to engage the broadcasting. The broadcasters to say this is what we're going to do, because part of what we are trying to do is to bring even partnership. Can all the broadcasters have a logo, yeah, go digital, all of them, so that we start promoting, because all of them are impacted upon. We engage in the private sector in terms of mobile network operators. They are standing to benefit as operators in the country in terms of once we migrate the spectrum release, are they able to come into the party and assist? So we're looking at partnership to close certain gaps, and it should be able to assist. So that's why we've put this budget to say these are the things that we are. I mean, I can tell you now, in terms of project office management cost, we literally have nothing, for example. And we're utilizing more the department's money and redirecting funds to try and manage some of the work. It's not enough. Public awareness, we're doing it through Imbizos, we're doing through radio. The other day we did connect to all community radio stations, where we were talking about this digital migration, trying to speak to the nation, but to ordinary South Africans through their community radio stations to be able to speak about this. Post office remains the point of registration for all people who are qualifying. So we're trying, but we are upping the communication method. That's one of the costs that is really affected if you add to, because it means, because we are marketing a product, some of them we're trying to find partnership, but in other areas we have to buy space. So I think Dr. Mtuvi as well and Mr. Titi will cover other issues I can come in if there's anything that we do not. So the budget is basically for what we have lined up there in terms of what needs to happen. Part of why we're pushing for phase 1 to happen, it has started already, because we are incurring warehouse costs. So we want to reduce those costs in terms of distribution, because we have 600, as the acting DG has said, 600,000 of set-top boxes sitting in the warehouse waiting to do. So want to push for them to be done by February, so that the cost that is associated with them in a warehouse is reduced.
Thanks. I think the one question is of phase 1. Phase 1 started last week. Currently, the team is in Northwest, and they'll be moving to Free State in terms of rollout. So I hope it covers that part. I think it's mainly support in terms of registration, awareness, and ensuring that immediately when we're done with that part, then they will come the second part where they come and install. Because what we have done in the past week was to conclude the training with DPW to ensure that we have sufficient installers, because it's one thing to have a number of set-top boxes, and it's another to have a number of installers to install those set-top boxes to meet the deadline. So the training with DPW is finalized now, and once we have concluded the first part of registration and verification, the installers will then come into install whatever that needs to be installed in those particular areas. As I said, they are in Northwest now, and they'll then move into Free State in the next week or so. In terms of what we have as a current budget, we've been allocated 25 million for 2018 to 2019, which is absolutely insignificant, and for 2019-2020 we are allocated 32 million for it. So there's a huge shortfall, and I think that's why there's a need for an engagement to ensure that there is sufficient budgeting to ensure that we meet the deadline of 2019 June. In terms of the question of the registration, I think Minister covered it, but we ensure that where SAPO is, we have put sufficient resources to assist SAPO. One model that we have applied is that before we go into a particular area, we engage with the local municipality. They assist us with information in that particular area, and we go into communication, messaging together, so that by the days allocated for registration, there's an increased awareness, and there's a lot of people who are coming to register to ensure that we have our numbers increase and we can be able to roll out the process. I think the rest of the questions, Minister has covered them. Yeah.
Maybe Mutuvi to explain the public awareness.
The project.
Thanks, Minister. Thank Chair. To ensure that we achieve efficiency in terms of the registration process on the ground, we have established through the engagement with provincial government, we have established steering committees at district and local municipality levels with the intent to achieve two objectives. One, that we have reliable data through the use of community development workers that have been assigned to work with us by different local municipalities. And secondly, to fast track the installation process, we are currently generating database of local installers so that we do not go to Gauteng and get somebody from Gauteng to do installations in Free State or Northwest. That is the process that we are of the view, and we are testing that in Northwest this week, that local installers are assigned a particular block or a village or a street to run with the installation processes. That will reduce and assist in the process of any defects or consumer assistance where there are challenges in terms of maybe if the device happen to be malfunctioning. You have somebody along the street, somebody local, to quickly come and fix and deal with the problem, because the current situation or the previous situation that we had was that we would have
installation companies coming from different area to different area. When there's a problem in the household, because for an example, Chair, you have an old aged lady at 66, 65 years. When they're busy cleaning, they pull out the RC cables, and the television cannot play going forward. If you have somebody around there who's an installer, they quickly run and fix the problem. So in partnership with the local and district municipalities, which we are getting support from the provincial governments, we are happy to report, Chair, that we are beginning to see improvement in the process. That that has built confidence to us that if we have necessary resources, we'll be able to achieve the deadline as prescribed by the minister.
Okay. Thanks. By the way, it can also be an old man, not old lady. Honorable Choba.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. A follow-up question, Chair, in the issue of installation. I'm a little bit confused, though the presentation is very clear about who's going. In page 14, actually, they are talking about the database and adequate number of installers to service their local municipalities. Who's going to manage all the process of the work? What about those local companies we have in our constituencies? Or what is the role of our constituencies in this issue of monitoring these installers? It is not clear to me, Chairperson, whether it will be the government of the provinces who's going to monitor all the work that will take place. And I'm worried if you are saying by June the work will start, maybe I'm not sure whether which province, because you are talking about 2 provinces whereby we have 9 provinces. But I want to make sure to know, what about the local businesses? Local businesses, how do they fit in this process? Also, in page 7, this information, Chair, is complicated. They are talking about the Public Works EPWP, where we are. Who's going to do this work? In page 7, you're complaining installer capacity within Public Works. Maybe I'm not following the information, but I want to be clear about the local businesses, and what about our constituencies? How do they fit in this issue?
Okay, any other hand before we go to SABC on this presentation? Make a follow-up, Honorable Fanda.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick one. There has been some comments from people in the sector that the technology that is currently being used is actually obsolete. And what needs to happen is that there needs to be actually an actual review of the digital migration policy. Is that something under consideration?
Can we get the response, and then after that we go to SABC?
Thanks, Chair. Let me start with the issue raised by Honorable Van Dam, and then the teacher will go, and Mr. Mchivi will go into the technical in terms of the training and other issues. Indeed, if you look at technology, if technology, use technology, even phones and everything, electronics are a bit of a challenge. After 5 years, they become an issue. That's why you can see in the presentation we're talking about both STB and IDTV, because we're cognizant of the times and what is moving. So we are considering. What is fortunate is that when the policy was being passed, both the set-top boxes, the STB and IDTV were incorporated into the policy. So we don't have to review policy, but we can change the implementation model of it. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. The installer database versus the EPWP program. In the previous committee meetings, there was a report that the department has entered into a memorandum of understanding between DPW and the department. DPW has committed to train 10 young people per individual local municipality. If you look at, for an example, a municipality big as Matlosana, it's big that 10 people cannot service that municipality. So what we are doing as the department, working hand in hand with the local municipalities, is to go to a particular area and the village and the municipality and say, from this local municipality, how many people who are able to do installation, who are qualified installers, who can assist in the program, to come and register on the database. Once they register on the database, what we are going to do is to utilize those local people through the USASA process to assist with the installation of the devices, while Public Works is training these 10 young people. The process has started in the Lijelepusa district municipality where we've started with the pilot of this training. Once they complete the training, they will be fitted into the pool of the installation companies that are there. So to answer the question about what about the local companies, those are the companies that we need in those respective areas to be involved in the installation. We have learned, Chair, that the countrywide we don't have sufficient installation teams that can service a particular municipality, and as a result, that is why we had a situation where some people were coming from other municipalities to another municipality. But to answer the question, we are generating database so that we can use those local companies, local individual installers who are qualified to do installations in those respective areas. And we are training young people to supplement the capacity that is within the respective areas.
How are you generating the database? Because the question that she's raising is about the local people benefiting in the whole.
Yes. We go to them for an example, Lijelepusa district municipality. We went there, we established a steering committee which is comprised of 3 representatives from individual local municipality. It's a community development, it's a public participation to assist with the community development workers to run and drive the awareness and registration campaigns. It's a local economic development to assist with the generation of database. They go and place an advert out to the public, local radio and public media to invite those who are qualified companies or individuals to register on the database, so that when we come to do a focused rollout, we'll utilize those local people. And the third one is to ensure that the public works have a direct engagement with the municipalities to identify young people to be trained as installers of these devices in the local municipalities.
Clarify, but also, Minister, you see the storage issue. It's over a number of years now, and my question was that it was never answered. Who's paying, and what impact does it have if it's paid by DOC? Because surely all this time there is a lot of impact.
Let me start with yours, Chair. Indeed, the storage it was not something that was built into the project. So it's a cost that we shouldn't have incurred, but we are incurring it, and we are carrying it out of the project. So we are paying because SAPO can't keep them for free. I mean, they having that. It was not envisaged. I think when they looked at the plan from USASA's point of view, they went and procured, and the understanding was that as people register, because we're anticipating that people will register in numbers, therefore they'll move. So it was moving from here, from the warehouse of the manufacturer to SAPO distributor across, and then they move. But because of the uptake, then we ended up with them in the storage. That's why we are saying we are clearing them, because we don't want such a situation. It's a cost that we shouldn't be incurring, that we are paying. On the issue of incorporation of local players, one is that majority, when we looked at the numbers, we do not have necessarily ready trained installers. So we looked at the numbers, we've called for those who are already trained so that we can incorporate them at every local area, because we do not have the capacity. Now, having looked at that, now it was identified that there's a gap. Now, part of that closing the gap was to partner with Public Works to say, can we train local? We don't take, for example, there was an incident where in one area we took some people from another province, let's say Gauteng, they went and installed, and the community protested to say you can't have that. So we fixed that to say installers shall be people who are coming from that area, so that it assists us. So that's how we're incorporating the people on the ground. We continue to update, talk to people when we are there to say, when you are an installer, through public messaging, through radio, community radio station messaging, and through local councillors as well, because that's why we have brought in the local municipalities so that they can assist us in getting some of the information out and also giving us some of the information. But I must say, Chair, we have a limited number of installers in the country that are already trained. So for us to meet the targets and to meet what we need, we might have to, as we were saying, put more money into training. But equally don't want to overtrain, because once you train them in big numbers, after the project, then what happens to them? So that's another issue. So we can train as a short-term method. They have an income. We can be happy, we'll be contributing towards issues of job creation, but long-term, there might not be sustainability, because we want that after we're done, these people must continue to be sustainable in the sense that they must service the market that is already available. Thanks, Chair.
Let's go to SABC.
Thank you very much, Chair, and for the opportunity just to come and explain the matter. Let me start by saying, Chair, the committee would be aware that both myself as the minister, together with the board, were appointed on the same day, and on that same day, a court judgment was delivered. It's a court that was brought by SOS against the Minister of, I'm just saying SOS and others against the Minister of Communication. Now, in that matter of that judgment, when the judgment was delivered, we looked at it, we sought legal advice. When seeking legal advice, and I'm saying we as government, Chair, because my responsibility in SABC is of a shareholder representative. So I'm representing government in SABC. So we looked at the matter, and then we came to a decision that we should appeal the court judgment. We appealed the court judgment. I did take the board into confidence prior to lodging the papers. They were doing their induction when I engaged with them. I did indicate that we will appeal. Not that we were seeking permission, because as a shareholder, we had to look at what is best interest for the country. Now, in that, it's because we had realized that the court judgment does not have only implication to SABC, but broadly to other state-owned entities. So that's one. We lodged the appeal, Chair. When we lodged the appeal, there was now an interdict that was brought. When the interdict was brought, we consulted a senior counsel to look at the matter, and we believe that there is no need for us to fight, because we agreed with some of the issues that the applicant was bringing, in this case, SOS. So we initiated a process of a declaratory order that it must be signed, Chair, and that was signed. It was a I don't know what is the correct wording of it, but I think it was approved or something by the 6th of December 2017. The legal people will know the right wording, so I'll just say in that, Chair, and I think I need to re-emphasize my position even to the portfolio committee. As the Minister of Communication, I do not have intention, or I do not want to appoint nor fire executives, because that is the responsibility of a board in any state-owned entities. But where it's important for us is to be consulted as government. Now, that's why the order, as you see it, as I'm saying, Chair, clarifying that we initiated the process of the declaratory order, because we felt that it's not important for us to fight even where there is no necessary to fight. And we said, if we can be allowed in the process when the board either fires or hires executive, they consult. And that has been in the declaratory order that has been issued, a declaratory order of the 6th of December 2017. Now, that's what has happened. In the process, Chair, then the SABC, we agreed with the SABC board that they must initiate the processes they've been involved in terms of finding executive, as we have committed that it's a priority to make sure that the entity is stabilized, one in terms of executive, but two in terms of finances, as you are aware that there are challenges in terms of finance. And part of the issues when we engage Minister of Finance, one of the issues that is very stringent on, it's around executive boards and executive. So from Cabinet's point of view as well, through the IMC that is overseeing state-owned companies, very stringent on the processes, ensuring that we have the right people, we have quality, and people who cannot take us back to where we see ourselves in terms of government with state-owned entities. So there is really strong emphasis. There is work. I'm part of that team as an IMC member, where we are looking even to the point of limiting even how many boards you can serve in as a member, the qualifications that people should have at serving at board level. So there is seriousness in terms of government to make sure that our state-owned entities governance comes right, and that's the string. And equally from my side, Chair, as a shareholder representative in the portfolio, I must say that I've also emphasized to the board that I would not be interacting with the board directly. I would work through the chair, who I would meet regularly to say these are the views, give feedback where there is a need. If there's a need for the board to say, no, we need to bring 4 people, we need to do this, that is happening. So that's the relation, Chair. I'm clarifying that as well so that it can be understood. I picked up a sense that, and sometimes because maybe I remember when I joined the executive and I was appointed in energy, the chair there told me that unfortunately, Minister, you are arriving in an environment where there is trust deficit. And I think even on this portfolio, there are those consequences of trust deficit, that even when you are in a good faith trying to do something, is perceived in a different manner. So I'm taking this, Chair, in that background to say there could be trust deficit, that there is always suspicion that I could be doing something wrong, and therefore hence I wanted to come up front and say this is what we are doing. So in the process, the board has been engaged in their process of recruitment, and I'm not going to delve into much the issues of the process, Chair, because there hasn't been. They can explain, the chair of the board and the HR chair can explain, but I don't want to compromise anything, and I'll explain my role. Now, in that process of everything that has been happening, explaining court order, that's my understanding of where I stand. Now, comes January, I see this, and I'm specifically going to what, because I don't want to compromise internal processes of recruitment. Come January, I see an article saying that Mr. Maroleng has been appointed into SABC. I ignored it because I told myself, it's one of those leaked stories, whatever, it's no merit. I checked with the team, has SABC issued anything? No, there's nothing from SABC, so we kept quiet. Until I received a call from presidency after seeing Mr. Maroleng accepting congratulatory messages. And then they asked me what is happening. And as obviously, because I didn't know that there's anything like that, I said, no, there's no such. Then I was sent the link. I also communicated to the chair to say, hey man, there's this thing that is coming up. I'm being asked to explain. I think it's best that you also try and issue a statement. I will have to explain to the leadership because I'm not representing myself. Equally, I was asked to explain, a lot of colleagues to say, but what is happening? But eventually, Chair, we had to clarify. That's when I issued a statement to say, as far as we are concerned, as far as we know, there isn't a formal appointment that has been done. The board will have to do every process. Once they are done as well, come through to us and say, we are done with the process. This is what we are recommending. And then as a shareholder representative, because if the court order says I shall be consulted, it's not necessarily me because I don't represent myself. That's why we had said that I will have to take it to cabinet for cabinet because cabinet represents the shareholder in terms of government. So I'll have to take it to cabinet for cabinet, not for cabinet to appoint, for information at cabinet and consultation at cabinet, Chair. So that's the matter where I stand on the matter, Chair. I have no issues against any individual, any South African that qualifies to be appointed, that the process has been followed to the latter, that we do not have problems there. I don't have an issue. My responsibility, Chair, is that of oversight, because if tomorrow it is to be found that, let's say, for example, the board has flouted the rules, because I'm a shareholder representative and I have the obligation of oversight over the board, I will be asked to answer. Both yourself here in Parliament will be calling me to come and answer. How did it happen under my watch? So that's the only thing, Chair. Because the statement was issued in the context that, as far as we are aware, having understood and agreed with the board in terms of what should happen in terms of the consultation and as well in the background of that court order, we understood that a process has not been concluded, and therefore we can't have a person already accepting congratulatory message because it sends a wrong signal. It needs to be the board that announces that this has happened, or it needs to be from a point of communicating from a government point of view to say we also are aware of this appointment. That's all, Chair.
Honorable Machoba is itching to raise something.
I won't be long, but as a member of this committee, I must be clear when I go out, because the society are watching the TV, listening to us. So I must be clear when they ask any question. Minister is mentioning the issue of 10 people they were trained as installers, if I'm correct. I want to know about those people. Where did you get those people? What criteria did the department use to select those 10 people? Who are they?
I passed that item, and we because maybe it's information that we can get from the department. We are now on the issue of SABC, and what I would suggest is that on that process there needs to be some communique clarity given, so that all members can because we are from constituencies, are aware of what is happening in their constituencies. I think that's what worries Honorable Machobe. Unfortunately, I passed that item, and I'm now on SABC. get that communique so that we are aware in our constituencies what we can do when we communicate with our people there. All right. Can are there questions on the SABC process that she has raised here? She has raised. Honorable Van Dam, you wanted the...
No, Chair, I thought you'd let the board speak first, or can we ask the minister?
I think the minister outlined the process of consultation between her department and the board. We can raise questions. If a board wants to respond, they can. Honorable Van Dam and Honorable Ndozi.
Thanks, Chair.
Honorable Tsedi.
Thanks, Chair. I think the orders are very clear. Was it an interim order? What was it? The minister referred to it as a declaratory order, whatever it is. I think it was an interim order. Said that the minister must be consulted, but she doesn't have any veto powers. It didn't say that consultation extends to cabinet. It said the Minister of Communications, which I think is very clear. I mean, if the intention was to include cabinet, it would have said consult the minister and cabinet. It didn't say and cabinet. It said the minister. Now, I understand what the minister is saying. She says she's acting in good faith. I think there's absolutely a trust deficit. We are very, very scarred about previous appointments that have been made at the SABC, undue interference by the minister. So I think we must be, as a committee, very vigilant in our oversight over this. So what's unclear for me, though, is what the consultation was. Did any consultation happen at all? I think the board or the minister can answer this question. And what was the form of consultation? Because as I understand it, it says the consultation says you must inform the minister saying we are considering X person for this position. The minister may, give input and say, I think this is good, I think this is great, or I disagree on that point. But ultimately, the decision is of the board, is the board's decision. So I'd like to know what the timeline was. What was the consultation? Was the minister sent a letter saying this is the person we're considering of appointing? And then if the process, as the board says, is still ongoing, how did Christmas Moroleng start accepting congratulations if the process was still ongoing? So those are the 2 points that are very unclear for me. 1, what was the consultation that happened? And 2, was Moroleng actually informed that he's been appointed?
Thank you. No, I want to read the minister her statement. It's very short. It says it is the ministers. Okay, let me start it from scratch. Minister Kubayi Ngubane clarifies process of appointment at SABC executives. The Minister of Communication has noted the media reports about the appointment of COO at SABC. The Minister wishes to advise the media that all appointments of COO, CEO, and CFO of state-owned entities are done through cabinet processes, and therefore the announcement of the outcome are made by cabinet. This is the minister's statement. It is the minister's responsibility to present any appointment of executives of state-owned entities under Department of Communication through cabinet processes. To this end, the minister has no knowledge of any official appointment of a COO of SABC. So this is not a confusion that we have. It's what you have said, that the cabinet even announces who the COO must be at the SABC. It's wrong. It's not true. It's a direct contradiction of the court order that you spoke about. So I don't think there was a confusion or a bad faith. I don't speculate. I think there was a bad faith. I think you were up to something, Minister. I think you must tell us what it is. Did you want a specific candidate in the SABC or not? And when they disagreed with you, did you want to stop the appointment of this person? That's a direct thing that we must say. This statement says you've interfered in the processes of the SABC and you defended it publicly. So if there was a confusion, I'm not sure what that confusion is, because the reports are not saying anything. It is your statement which is admitting an interference. So I'm not reading media reports. I'm reading your statement and I'm reading an interference. It's dangerous. So we have to present this as fact, Chairperson, that in the statement it's an admission. It's an admission of interference. Not a media report or a Sunday Tribune or something, or a tweet. I've just read for you the philosophy in the head of the minister and why she disputes that there can be an appointment. In fact, she believes that there must be a cabinet meeting in which it announces who the SABC COO is in this statement. So the question of interference for me is a fact admitted here. Now, I want to pose this question also to the board, and I want to warn all of you that to speak in parliament is to speak under oath. Don't lie. Don't mislead parliament. Don't mislead the public. What happened? Is there still interference in the SABC by a minister? I want to warn you, because you don't have the monopoly of information. Precisely because that institution is so much in carcass, it's going to hurt you if you respond to this question wrongly, because we'll give you evidence. Is there interference by the minister in the appointment of SABC executives or not? Thank you. And, Chair, and I want the response from the minister and from the board. They must both speak, and they must speak truthfully.
Thank you very much. Honorable Tsedi.
My take is that the board of the SABC is here, and it will be wrong for us to speak on their behalf. And I don't want to go into the discussion on the interference of the minister. But my take is that we have got a responsibility as parliament to make sure that people who qualifies in all respects are appointed as executives in the SABC. When we recommended to parliament board members, this board, the current board that we're talking about, we said we hope this time around the SABC will go back to its glory days. Surely we cannot afford to go back to a situation that led to us dissolving the board of the SABC. So we've got a responsibility. All I'm saying is that the SABC board is here. Can they take us into confidence and explain the process that led to the appointment of this person? Does this person qualifies in all respects in terms of relevant legislation? So that tomorrow, these are the issues that will still come back to us as parliament. So all I'm saying is that we must not continue to speak on their behalf. Let them come in, explain all these processes, and take us into confidence whether the person that we're talking about qualifies, or where exactly is this process of appointment.
Okay. Thank you very much, Honorable Tsedi. Any other question? We are trying to ensure that we don't go back to 2016. No, is it 2016? When we experienced a number of board members resigning in our meeting and say these things have been happening. I tender my resignation. You remember, members? So it's good that we have the board as well, so that you don't say you were suppressed 3 years down the line and resign here. So those are the few questions that we have. Members, questions are very clear. Minister, your statement was read by Honorable Ndlozi. Just on the statement, it was read here. Some clarities, because we are not in SABC, we are not in the department. We want to ensure that everything goes according to decisions. Minister?
Shall I allow SABC board chair and HR chair to lead? I'll follow. Because questions in terms of the process, and having not spoken,
yes,
I would like to allow them to speak.
Yes. Mr. Makatini.
Thank you, Chair. Greetings, honorable members, and to the Chair. I'm going to answer some questions, and some questions I'll refer to the Chairperson of the HR and Remuneration Committee. The question around consultation, yes, there was consultation, and consultation was done in 3 forms. There were meetings between me and the Minister, and there was also a meeting between me with the Minister and some of the board members. On top of that, we had letters, basically where we were sort of communicating with the Minister in terms of every step of the way and the decision that we were making as a board. And also the Minister wrote to us. So consultation was done in that form. So there were meetings and there were letters and discussions. The question around how come that the story came out in the media. As the board, we did not sanction that media report. What we had done, for us to be able to finalize the process of the COO appointment, we had to subject the candidate to vetting, security vetting. And for you to do that, you've got to extend a conditional offer so that the person can be comfortable to be subjected to the process. So we did confirm also in a letter to the Minister that we have extended a conditional appointment subject to vetting, which is the process that we are busy finalizing. And that's why the statement issued by the board was that the process is currently being finalized. That's what we meant. I'm going to request the chairperson of the HR committee just to take us through the process of appointment, because that process happens within the HR and Remuneration Committee, jointly with Governance and Nominations Committee of the board.
Thank you, Chairperson and honorable members. Thank you to Minister and her team. I will really just take us through the process so that it puts it into context. And I will start out by saying that this was a continuation of a process that had started previously. As you know, that when we appeared in front of this committee as the interim board, the matter of the appointment of executives was one of the requirements. When we did the handover to the permanent board, which we are also part of, we then also handed over the process to the permanent board. The permanent board met with the candidates that had been identified by the interim board and presented to the previous minister for recommendation. The permanent board satisfied itself that the recommendations met the criteria in terms of experience, in terms of qualifications. We verified qualifications and your usual criminal records and all those things, which we asked the agency that we have appointed to do those. We did reference checking and we presented all that to the board. Once the permanent board had been appointed, the chairperson communicated with the minister, which I think minister has said, as well as the chairperson, indicating the names of the name of the preferred candidates. There was interaction. Minister did respond to that communication. As the chairperson has outlined, that there was a meeting that was held between the chairperson and the minister, as well as the minister and delegation from the board. So I think that addresses the matter of consultation as to whether there has been any consultation. There has been both meetings and correspondence to that regard. Maybe fast track to the end of the process, where post the judgment and the court order or the draft order that we refer to, the board once again via the chairperson communicated with minister on the decision to go ahead and make the offer subject to the vetting process, which had come through in the interaction with the minister as well, that there is no way we can appoint a person to a senior position at the SABC without vetting having been confirmed. The statement that came, or rather the article that came out in the press that inquired of the SABC as to whether we had appointed the gentleman to the position of COO. We also received inquiries from the media before it was published. We chose as a board not to respond. They were asking us for a statement. We chose not to respond, but the spokesperson of the SABC did say that we are in the process of an appointment, and we were therefore not going to communicate. It has always been our policy as a board that we do not communicate employee matters via the media. So to that end, we chose not to communicate. Subsequent to the minister's statement and further inquiries, where we were being asked once again whether specifically there was consultation or not consultation, we chose to respond and talk to the court order that and outlined, because there was a question as to whether we were complying with the court order or not by even making the offer. So we chose to respond to what the court order said, and that as a board we believed that we have and continue to follow the process as outlined by the court order. So where we are now is that we need to conclude the process. I think there are questions that have been asked on qualifications, competence and all that, and when I responded to say that we had checked references, we had done what we believe in the typical HR arena is what you need to test whether a person is appropriate, check of qualifications and all that. And we had satisfied ourselves as a board that even as we recommend the candidate to minister, that the person does qualify in that regard. I trust that that does outline the process. If there's anything that I've left out, we can respond.
Okay.
Okay.
That's the explanation, members, Minister, and then I'll come to you.
Yeah, I think, colleagues, there's an issue around what Honorable Van Dam raised about the minister, that the court order says minister. And we need to go back and understand the role of the minister in terms of the executive authority when it comes to the state-owned entities. As I said, colleagues, I do not represent myself. Because if you are, because there's guidelines on how we do things in government. And in terms of when you sit, when you're saying you are an executive authority and a shareholder represent, because the Minister of Communication, the reason why the court order will say the Minister of Communication, it could have said minister. It's Minister of Communication because the Minister of Communication is a shareholder representative at SABC. Now, you couldn't go into a court judgment and put all those details. That's shareholder representative. It's that context, and that's the interpretation, unless if our lawyers are misleading us. But that's the interpretation in terms of the law. That's interpretation, as we said. Hence, even in my statement, Honorable Ndlozi, I would make reference, because as a minister in the department, I have delegated powers from the president. So president, as the head of state in terms of the constitution, will delegate powers to ministers, and then ministers will delegate certain powers to the director generals. Now, the powers I have are delegated powers. That's why you could see even in certain cases, the reference we can make to various cases where ministers were found wanting because they have upset the powers and made them themselves their powers. Now, these powers are I'm representing government, and government in this context is cabinet, because that's where it's sitting. You have government of the day voted in, and the people who take decisions on behalf of government, or if you are to consult, that is as cabinet. That's the spirit of the statement. Not to mislead, not to interfere. That's why even every time I've always taken calls to say and explain to the nation to say, I do not want to be the hiring and firing. I'm not involved in the process of selection and all that. If as they come into consultation, you say, what are these weaknesses? Are you picking up this weakness? That's not interference. You are cautioning so that you are satisfying yourself. You've applied your mind. And this we are doing this cognizance, honorable members, that today, I mean, we are held liable as ministers, personally liable. So I must satisfy myself that I've done my job. And I can go back and say, even when you ask me, Honorable Minister Kubayi, as per your responsibilities and the duties that has been given to you, have you done your job? If I have sat with the board and say, are you cognizant of this? Can you do this? And we agree on a process. That process must be followed to the letter. As the board chairperson and the HR chairperson has said that the process has not been concluded. And that's my concern, that how do we have this matter in the public space when the process has not been concluded? If it was just a leak, it's fine. I could have easily ignored it. But for the individual to accept congratulatory message, it sent a wrong signal. And more than anything, let me just explain, honorable members. Yes, SABC is a public entity. It's a public broadcaster, not a state broadcaster. But the reality is, and the financial viability and issues needs proper governance. When we meet with lenders, when we meet with rating agencies, there are things they raise with us. Now, we are conscious as ministers, and especially myself, I'm very conscious to make sure that we are not found wanting when we are questioned, Chair. If rating agencies are to say, but your normal process of appointment as this government on state-owned entities or whatever you call. In terms of PFMA, Honorable Ndlozi, SABC is classified under Schedule 2. Now, we might have to go back and correct the state-owned entity issue from a PFMA point of view. Because if you are to talk, it's false, it's a public broadcaster, but it is an entity of government. It's a state-owned entity because government is 100% shareholder of SABC on behalf of the people of South Africa. So now the government of the day is there, and therefore we are saying in terms of the process, because part of the responsibility we have as government is to be able to outline how we govern, how we have regulatory environment, including what Treasury will put as responsibilities. Now, in the environment where SABC is, we have to make sure that we are cognizant of the environment, not only in terms of governance, but to have an institution that has credibility, to have an institution that South Africans can trust that the right things are happening in the right manner. And that's my interest, to represent South Africans very well. I have no interest of interfering or bullying or doing anything to the board. I'm very clear in engagement. If there's issues I call, as Chair said, we meet, and I've made that point that the chairperson of the board is my point of reference. If we meet on an issue and we agree to say this needs other people, we bring in other members. We've done that previously. It's not that there's anything that I'm hiding. there's no interference. I mean, I can safely say that, I mean, even being at SABC, I've been once since I've been appointed, and I think it's a record time for all.
Yes, you have to go. Can I, because she apologized for 12 o'clock, can I give it to her?
Thanks, Chair.
And then Honorable Matisha, and then you will follow Honorable Doze.
Thanks, Chair.
And
This
then
issue.
Seti will finalize.
Thank you, Chair. This issue is very simple to me. There's a requirement that the minister must be consulted. She was consulted. The board must carry on and make the appointment. Whether about the minister's responsibilities to cabinet, to her political party, the board has fulfilled what it needed to do in terms of the law, in terms of a court order. That's all we need to really be seized with. And I think they've done what they were required to do, and they must be given the space to make their appointments. Thank you, Chair.
I still have the responsibility, honorable members, to ensure that they follow the process to the letter. As they've said, the process has not been concluded, so the matter is not closed. Until they are finished, they will do the process, we agree. They will do to the letter, receive everything, we'll make sure that it's done. So you can't say because they have consulted, I mean, I can't clearly say they've followed process. Tomorrow, if you ask me that they've breached their own process, what am I going to say? If they don't receive the security clearance and they announce, are you not going to, and then something happens, are you not going to ask me to say, but you had the duty to ensure that the process is followed? So that's the issue. They will do their part, finish it. It's not about Utawingen, it's about process, honorable member, that we must ensure that the process is followed to the letter. There we agree.
I think this thing must be between the two of you. But I think what's very clear, yonke into must put aside, but there is consultation, as I hear, between the minister confirmed by the board on this process. And the last thing that the board raised was that there is a vetting process. Among the processes that they are following, there is vetting. I think I heard that. And the process is not concluded, I think, because there are still those issues that they are dealing with as the board.
My point is, Chair, though, the minister's role has ended. The only role she has was to be consulted. Anything else she does beyond that is interference. That's my point.
That's her point. That's not the conclusion. It's her point. Honorable Matisha, I'll come.
I truly think that there is a problem. And in my own opinion, this has got to be relooked. There is a very serious problem. What the minister, in my opinion, has said is actually contradicting. She contradicts herself. Okay. Okay. The SABC board there says, number one, to quote you, you say, quote unquote, there were meetings between me and the minister. Okay, that's what the chairperson there has said. The second statement, quote unquote, I wrote a letter to ensure that vetting was done. Okay. That is the first thing that you have raised. And what I want to point at is that, number one, albeit the minister may not be sitting at the board meetings frequently, etc., etc., she is a member of the board. Okay. By virtue of the fact that she represents the owners, permit me to say, of the SABC, and these are the people. She is there, but then she does not have the power alone to simply say, yes, this has been done. Because in what I've heard is that she has said, yes, I've not done this, but yes, I've done this, etc. And that, I believe, is a very serious problem. And I think this whole thing has got to be relooked so that we truly have what has got to be established. We have a person. You spoke about the vetting, etc. Are you able to give us the results? We need to have that. I mean, I'm not saying that persons from outside of South Africa must not be put into these major positions, etc. I wonder if that was checked as well. Okay, I know the gentleman spoken about here is from Zim. When you handled the whole thing of vetting, etc., was that looked at, as well, etc.? I would propose that that be explained. Okay, right. But then I think there's a great deal of contradiction in a number of areas.
Honorable Jose.
I think that my interest is to separate the two. I'm not interested in turning this into some Sunday afternoon salad. Where is your place as the ministry in relation to the appointments in the SABC? So who gets appointed will debate when that comes to us. If the competence and so on and so forth. It has not been presented to us yet. Because they are arguing, they are still going through the process. They've given a conditional offer. And if the media is reporting about the conditional offer, so what? As long as the process according to the court order has been sustained. Again, I mean, my worry here is that why having a minister who's not willing to take the advice or at least the clarity from Parliament. So let me make an attempt again. I'm going to read the court order for her. Paragraph 1.3 says the board will make any permanent or interim appointment of an executive member as envisaged in paragraph 1.1 above only after consultation with the Minister of Communication. With the phrase after consultation to have the meaning set out in the matter Premier Western Cape versus President of the Republic of South Africa 1993, especially paragraph 85. What does paragraph 85 says? Paragraph 85, and I think most importantly is the last sentence. The result is that the minister must have regard to the views of the MEC concerned, but is not bound by them, and can direct such transfers take place against the wishes of the provincial government. If you read this in relation to the SABC, is that the result is that the SABC must have regard to the views of the minister concerned, but is not bound by them. Why do we say that, Honorable Chairperson? We say that because the minister says in her statement, it is the minister's responsibility to appoint, to present any appointment of executives to the cabinet through cabinet processes. She also says in state-owned entities, cabinet processes must go through cabinet processes. Therefore, the announcement of the outcome are made by cabinet. And this is the problem and the confusion. You don't announce the appointments of the SABC minister. Because if you do, it means you are appointing them when the court order says you are not. The appointing authority is the board. So I thought that that is clear. That's number one. Whether you go and talk with Zuma or you don't, I'm not sure. I don't get involved. I'm not even getting involved with whether ministry means cabinet or what. The point is, they consult you and they are not bound by your opinion. Even if that opinion can be the opinion of cabinet, it doesn't bind them. They can wake up tomorrow and make a decision of their own, because it is the public broadcaster. That would be possible maybe in other state-owned entities, but not here. Because that's why the matter went to court and there was a court order. So your opinion, it can be, I don't know, beautiful, whatever. It doesn't bind them. So that is the independence of the board. That is the independence of the SABC. That's why it's not a state broadcaster. That's why it's a public broadcaster. It's because it's not bound by your opinion in relation to appointment of executives. If that were to be the case, it would cease to be a public broadcaster. It will be a spaza shop of cabinet. It would be what it was under apartheid, essentially. And we can't leave this meeting when you don't understand this, or at least you must be able to say you disagree with it, so that we know we have a crisis, Honorable Chairperson. That's the first point. The second point is a bit straightforward here, and that is, I want to caution these officials, both at the SABC and cabinet. You see, you don't wait for speculations and so on and so forth. If the minister is interfering and you allow that as board members, you are failing in your responsibilities. If you don't tell us as members of parliament, I don't know for what reason, you will be failing in your responsibilities to protect the integrity of that institution. Interference would precisely mean her trying to bind you to her opinion. That would be in direct contradiction with the clauses that I've read. Threatening you with cabinet processes that you must wait when you have told her, we've heard you. We're not waiting for any cabinet, and you don't have to. If she says, okay, I want to go and brief the president, that's fine, but you're not bound by her opinion of what you would have presented to her. That means the day she doesn't come back to you, you can still move on. Because you can't wait for opinion which is not binding. So consultation means you say, Minister, here is what we think. We want to move on with speed to stabilize the SABC. If she takes 3 months and says, no, because I must go and consult, you can move on without her. Because you are the state broadcaster. We must warn this board. Because we went through tough times and we tried to put them through the eye of the needle in front of the entire public. You must stand very firm. And in addition, you come here to tell us if the ministers are interfering with the appointment that you are seized with. Because her opinion really, in this case, is not binding. And that's the court order. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Chair, I don't think the committee has got any intention to appoint executive members of the SABC board, because it is not our responsibility to start with. And I will make a concrete proposal, chairperson, maybe to assist us going forward. As much as we don't have, it is not our responsibility to appoint the executives of the SABC, but we have got a political responsibility to ensure that there is stability in the entity. Honorable Njozi said a mouthful. We have taken a lot of efforts to bring the SABC to where it is today. And it is our responsibility to do everything in our power to ensure that we don't go back to the issues that led to us dissolving the board of the SABC. That was a very painful decision, Chairperson. And I don't want to go back. And my concrete proposal is that we have listened to what the minister has said. We have listened to the board with regard to all these issues. I think we need a special session to talk about these issues. As I've indicated when I started, we don't have an intention to appoint the executives of the SABC because it's not our responsibility. But we've got a political responsibility to ensure that proper things are done in the SABC in running the affairs of the public broadcasting. Because if things go wrong, they'll still come back to us. As much as we're saying it's not our responsibility to appoint the executives. So all I'm saying, Chair, my proposal is that we need a special session of the portfolio committee to process this particular matter and pronounce ourselves very clearly. Where do we stand with regard to all these issues?
The proposal, as the proposal members, that we had the report on processes and up to this point, and processes of consultation are still continuing. We then come back and engage on the report. I think this is what you are saying, because we have meetings every Tuesdays. Can we live with that, members, so that we don't spend the whole day on this matter? It's very critical, Your Honor. It needs time. Before you, Minister, let's hear Honorable. Do you want to come back, Honorable Medici, on the proposal?
Yeah, permit me to say yes, I agree. However, the questions that have been raised, if they could be responded to, I think that will be okay. But then the actual debates and taking up of the action, that will happen when we come back as he has proposed. But then if we could be clarified, questions have been raised, that would help.
Honorable Machoba.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I support the motion of having our special session as a committee, because there are many outstanding clarities. You remember, my question was still not clear about the answer. So we must have that meeting as soon as possible, Chair, because we need that clarity, many clarities from the department. Thank you, Chair.
You want to come back? I'll be coming back to you, Honorable Kalakwana. Yes.
No, Chairperson, I don't agree. No, I think we're fine. We've got the guidelines here, the court order, and that's what we expect these people to do. We shouldn't come back to this matter. We must not be held at ransom by the minister or anyone else. Clarifying this matter again on a different occasion. The marching orders are clear of what is expected to happen. Let's not mince our words. Secondly, if the proposal is regarding set-top boxes or it's regarding us hearing about the report of the SABC in full, that is in the program as far as I'm concerned. There's no special meeting that is needed. And Honorable Machoba must push. If she wants to know who the 8 people who have been trained are, she must be given an opportunity to be told. We don't need a special meeting to discuss what?
Honorable Kalako?
No, thank you, Chair. No, I wanted just to comment on the proposal, Chair, and just the difficulty I have with it. I think as a committee we can clarify with ourselves on these issues. But I don't want that proposal to have an implication that the board must not move with this work. And whatever discussions they have with the minister as a part of a stakeholder there, I think that must move, because what we are interested in is the filling of those top positions in the SABC. I don't want this thing of delaying. I have, for instance, also, I didn't want to get to this debate of cabinet, the minister, the board. It's good that that way, because we can have different interpretations on that. To me, the focus must be just as if this one is clarified, and I'm clear in my mind what the board have told us, including the minister. They were just clear that they are still continuing with the processes of vetting. Once that is finalized, all processes must move. My fear was that we must not, whatever we're proposing, stop without those processes to move, Chair.
No, that was not my understanding too. Because we were saying the processes of consultation, including the vetting process, continuing. I think that was the issue. So there is nothing stopping. But the issues that were raised, who does what, and all of that, those are the issues that we can engage, because we are clear the board appoints. And the board, and that's what the minister was saying, the board appoints, but not undermining the process of consultation that they are engaged in. I think this is what you were all saying. And I accepted the proposal on those bases, because we really need to move forward. And I agree, Honorable Kalako, it doesn't stop the process at all. Can we agree that we will finalize this one? Nzanu msebenzi wenu, together with the minister, as we have started. And then we'll get a report of what has been finalized when we meet you again. I think that proposal, for me, Katsedi, was saying we'll then get a final report when we come back again. Great. Are there any outstanding questions that needs to be responded to? Yes, Minister.
Chair, I think the issue raised by Honorable Madisha, who wanted to know if vetting has been concluded and if the committee can have access to the vetting report. We'll have to check in terms of that. Remember, I'm not so sure if we're allowed to circulate the vetting report. We'll have to check that. I don't think it is allowed. But we can check in terms of Parliament. I know to the third party you can't. If it relates to Parliament, I'm not so sure how that can be handled. It has not been finalized. The report I got last week, Friday, from State Security was that the minister was indicating that they only received the forms, I think, last week, Wednesday, back from the person. So there wouldn't be any. But that's, and I think, Chair, from my side as a minister, I need to reiterate this. There is no intention of interfering. I agree with your summary. I do not want to appoint. I do not want to fire. But I think I need to bring to the attention that members, you need to know that this is an interim order. As I said, Chair, it's like 3 cases on one. We are still on the process of the appeal. So the final, so that tomorrow you don't say I'm misleading Parliament when I come back, if there's a different court decision. So this was in relation to the interdict. There is a process where we are saying the judgment has been based on a wrong MOI, therefore it must be set aside, that judgment, because it was based on a document that was not registered with the CIPRO. So that's another issue. So once we come back, it will be very clear.